Welcome. Welcome back. Hopefully you had a great lunch. This afternoon session, Kristine, Kathryn, Rusch.
Well, he kept that short. Okay, I'm Kristine Kathryn Rusch. I've done like pretty much everything in publishing except agenting, and I'm doing indie now and doing all kinds of things. Write a blog called Chris Writes. Business Musings, Chris Writes, usually on Thursday. It's probably going to go live tonight as it is. It's about the business of publishing. So it covers a lot of stuff. So if you're interested, head over to chriswrites.com and you can find it. The topic for this panel is the dangerous pursuit of perfection. I actually wrote a book called The Pursuit of Perfection. And the reason I do a lot of talks and I write about it a lot is because it is perfection that kills most writers' dreams. And I really am all about the dream. I can still remember being a young girl and wanting to write and how important it was to tell stories. And I'm still that young girl inside. It's really important. And I have watched so many people pursuing perfection to making writing no longer fun. You know, they just keep trying and they get more excited and they get 12 drafts in and 15 drafts in and it's work. You're making your writing work. And I really want you guys to learn how to make your writing fun. There's a bunch of things that I'm probably going to say that other writers completely disagree with. And so just take it for what it's worth. This is my opinion. And I'm going to do two parts today. I'm going to do craft and business, just a little bit on business. It's mostly going to be a discussion of craft because that's where we kill ourselves because we live in our heads. And then I'm going to have a little time for questions too. Okay? So let's start with craft first. In both craft and business, it is really important to control your work, meaning you are the god of your fiction. It all lives in your head. I used to have, when I was starting to do audiobooks, the narrator would call me and he'd say, "How do you pronounce that word?" I write science fiction and fantasy. And I'm like, "Oh, no, this is how I pronounce it." And he said, "Well, I want to get it right." And I'm like, "Well, I made it up. So, you know, it doesn't really matter. You can say whatever you want, but this is what I prefer. I am the god of my own fiction, so he did it my way. But, you know, I made up the word." And when you're in control of your own fiction, nobody else knows what's in your head, just you. What we write are stories. We don't write words. And stories, what words are, they're a tool to get the story out of the writer's head and put it in the head of a reader who lives millions of miles away. You've never met. And so what you need to learn as a storyteller, because you're coding, you need to learn how the coding works. And once you've learned that, that's your manuscript. Then you understand how to tell stories on the written page. Okay? That's all you're asking for help for when you're asking people, you know, what they think of your story. You're not asking, is this word correct or is that word correct? You want to know if your coding worked so that the story that's in your head is in somebody else's head when you're done. If you remember that, and you remember that you're a storyteller and not a writer, you're going to get 90% of what I'm about to tell you this afternoon. Just remember, you're storytellers. Okay, now, I'm sorry to tell you this. There is no perfect story. There isn't. You're never going to get it right. Nobody's ever going to get it right. If you sit in a critique group, there will always be somebody who's going to tell you what's wrong with your story. The problem with us as writers is we gravitate toward that person. Oh, really? Is that what's wrong? You don't listen to all the people who are praising you. You listen to the person who tells you what's wrong. So I always like to do a thought experiment. I'm in a critique group, and the guy whose work is up is a guy by the name of Bill Shakespeare. And let me tell you what's wrong with Bill Shakespeare's work. First of all, Romeo and Juliet should have moved. It's not really hard. You know, their families are having this dispute in this town, and yeah, they're the most important families in the town, so why didn't they run off to a nearby town? That would have been fine. There would have been no bloodshed. There would have been, it's what we call in my critique group a balloon prick story. You start pricking at it, it goes away. There's no reason for the story. And Bill, this Midsummer Night's Dream thing, 3 endings? Are you kidding me? Pick one. All right? If I were to pick it for you, get rid of the play within a play. That's just stupid. Who cares that they're all sitting around getting married and watching a play afterward? Who watches a play after they just got married anyway? I mean, really, Bill. That's what happens in critique groups, especially peer critique groups. They take all the good stuff that's in the middle of a story and they throw it out. And there may be really good reasons. I mean, the stuff that people love the most about A Midsummer Night's Dream, most people love a play within a play. And I would have told him, because personally, I don't like the play within a play, I would have told Mr. Bill Shakespeare to get rid of it. What do I know? People have loved that play for 400 years. So there is no perfect story. And if you're going to have a critique group, especially a peer critique group, what you use them for is audience. And you have to have a pretty steel spine to do it. What you want is you want to be able to listen to them as they go around and hear if they understood the story that was in your head. Not whether you should tweak this character on page 7 or you needed to add more commas. Who cares? What you want to find out is, did they understand what the story you were trying to tell, or did they completely miss it? And if half the room completely missed it, well, then it's not on the page yet. That's about as simple as it comes. And here's the other secret about peer critique groups. If everybody loved your story, it's mediocre. Because what we're trying to do as storytellers is to get people riled up emotionally. And some people don't like to be riled up emotionally, so they're going to hate your story. And some people absolutely loved what you had to say. They loved the message. And so they're going to really love the story. And if you've done a good story and it has a good moment in your critique group, at the end of it, everybody's shouting at each other. No, it's really good. I don't know what's wrong with you. That play within a play, that is the best part of the story. No, I think it's terrible. I really find it boring, and I really would have wanted it to end right before that. Okay? That's the sign of a good story. But most writers can't handle that. They can't handle peer critique groups. They want somebody to tell them what's good and what's bad. And really, it's up to you, and it's up to your readers down the road. So, peer critique groups, I don't think they're worthwhile. I really don't, especially those peer critique groups where they're critiquing unfinished manuscripts. No, how do they know that the knife that you've put in chapter 3 is going to come to play in chapter 33? They don't know that. So they're going to argue about whether you planted the knife correctly or whether the knife even needs to be there. And they have no idea what the finished book is. They don't know what the trajectory of the novel is. Please, if you're in a workshop where you do unfinished work, leave. You're writing by committee. That's not what writers do. Fiction writers who write stories, we are the gods of our own fiction. If you want to write by committee, there's a whole bunch of ways you can tell stories by committee. You can work in Hollywood, you can work in the gaming industry. They all work by committee. And it's all consensus. But you're a novelist, you write short stories, it's your world, your decision. Make sure that you are feeling very strong about that. And don't ever do unfinished work in a critique group. The other thing about peer workshops is they destroy your voice. Let me explain what I mean by that. I had a professor in college, a really good writer. He walked in one day, first day of class, creative writing professor, and he said, "There are 7 plots. Shakespeare did them better. If that scares you, leave now." Nobody left. Nobody got scared because he ended up teaching us about voice. All we have is our voice, our way of telling the story, who we are, our perspective. And the problem with our voice and our perspective is, it's been in our head since we've learned how to speak, probably before that. It's our perspective. It's who we are. So when you hit your voice, you think you wrote something really dull. Because that's the way the world is. And everybody else goes, "Oh, wow, the voice is so strong and the perspective is so new, and I've never thought about the world that way." And you're going, "What? This is the dullest thing I have ever written." Yay, you just hit your voice. Applause, applause. And so when you do that, and you turn that into your peer critique group, and somebody objects to your world perspective or your life perspective, you start changing it. Or they don't like the words you used in that particular thing, and you start changing it. Or they figure you needed more commas, and you start adding them. You're nullifying your own voice. You're getting rid of the thing that makes it you, because you can't hear your own voice. You can't see your own voice. So you think it's not there. And so you're gravitating toward that loudest voice in the room, the one who's completely wrong, the one who, like me, would have eviscerated Shakespeare. And that's not the person you should be listening to. What you need to start doing is write and release. You write, you get a good copy editor, and you release the books, because those books are going to be in your voice. Those books are going to have your perspective. And sure, you might do something in the storytelling that half your workshop says you can't do that. And how do you know that readers haven't been craving that? Because workshops over the years have been telling writers, don't do that. And now a bunch of you in the room are going, I don't have a workshop. I don't do peer critique workshops. I don't do all that stuff. But I'll bet you, those of you who are having that thought, all have developmental editors, don't you? No developmental editors? No content editors? Good for you. Because content editors and developmental editors are people who have never written something that is successful. So why are you listening to them? Copy editors work on continuity, because you need them. Because if you're going to change somebody's name, chapter 5, call him Sam. Chapter 15, you call him Steve. Good. Copy editor will find that. But a developmental editor, you don't need them. Because they are trying to take your story and turn it into somebody else's story. And when you're hiring a developmental editor, and you're hiring, or you're going to a peer critique group, or you're using a content editor, what you're saying to yourself is, my story isn't perfect yet, and I'm going to make it perfect. But remember, go back to the beginning of this. There is no perfect. What there is your story, your writing, what you're doing, and you're never going to see what makes it completely successful, and nor should you, really, because then you'll start chasing that, and you're going to start ruining it again. So just write what you do and go with it. Okay, guys? Just go with it. Let's talk for a minute about punctuation, because you heard me mention commas a minute ago. Copy editors out there in the room, you all have your own opinion about punctuation. I have my opinions about punctuation because I line edit sometimes, copy edit a little bit when I do editing. The thing is that when you can always tell a writer who doesn't know grammar or punctuation. They're missing the basic rules. They're really missing them stupidly, and they don't understand it. So your job as writers is to make sure you understand grammar and punctuation in your bones. You got to know it in your bones. You got to love words. You got to understand how all the punctuation and all that stuff works, and then you get to throw it out. Because once you know how it works, think of yourself as a jazz musician. Jazz musicians do things in music that nobody else can do because they take the basic rules and they flip them, and that's your job. Punctuation in particular is one of my bugaboos, because punctuation is not about putting your comma in the right place and whether or not you're religious about the Oxford comma. Who cares? Punctuation is about sound, because remember, we're taking the story from your head and putting it in the head of somebody millions of miles away. So you want that story to sound a particular way, and the way that you make it sound that way is with punctuation. Punctuation tells you things. A period is a full stop. A comma is a breath. A semicolon is a little longer breath with a bit of a pause, and a colon itself is a pause, a dramatic pause. And then you have, best example of all is Emily Dickinson. Because when she was first published, and she was published just once in her lifetime, the editor took out all of her punctuation. And they put in standard punctuation. Because I could not stop for death, comma, he kindly stopped for me, period. But she wrote breathlessly. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. And it was all in her punctuation. Dashes, they're breathless. Ellipses fade away. Learn this stuff, folks. And so, yeah, you're going to get a copy editor at some point who's going to really object to your M dashes. So what? Put them back in. Don't hire that copy editor again. It's that simple. You know? Parenthetical thoughts. Parenthetical parentheses. In a character's head, they are a thought. So that was like right now, my parentheses would have been, ooh, a couple people laughed. But it would have been parenthetical in the middle of one of the sentences I was speaking. okay? So start learning this stuff. One of the best places to learn it, for example, is other writers. Stephen King is a master of punctuation. Most people who don't like Stephen King dislike him not because of the stories he tells, but because his voice is so strong. He's actually inserting his voice in your head. And if you buy, there's a story called LT's Theory of Pets. I would suggest that you buy it and read it. It's a Stephen King story. And then buy the audiobook, because King reads it himself. And what you'll notice is that aside from the main accent, which he could not put into the fiction, the rest of the story is exactly what he put in your head. He reads it the way he punctuated it. There are a number of other writers who are like that, some of them indie, some of them not. You'll know them when you find them because their voice is so strong it doesn't feel like you speaking. Type in their words, type in their punctuation. It'll be hard to do because you'll want to put punctuation somewhere else because that's your voice. But learn theirs, see what they're doing with the punctuation, try to figure it out. It's one way of learning because that's what it's all about, really, is learning. And once you realize there is no perfect story and you stop chasing this perfect story and having other people tell you whether or not your story is finished or your story is any good, then you're free to start writing the stories you want to write. And you're free to be able to start capturing your own voice. Okay, so that is the writing side of things. Let's talk for a minute about the business side of things. I talked a bit about editors. Everybody tells you need an editor. No, you don't. You need a good copy editor just to make sure there aren't spelling and other kinds of mistakes. And even then, your copy editor and your proofer are going to miss some because you're going to miss some. And then when you put the corrections in, you might make another mistake. Oh, well, I don't think there's a book out there that doesn't have some kind of mistake in it. All right? The great thing about indie, in fact, one of my favorite things about indie is that if you put a bad cover on your book, you can take it off, and you can put a different one on it. And if you've marketed it to the wrong subgenre, well, good heavens, you can change the keywords, and you can fix it. If your blurb was the worst blurb ever written, and you came here and you learned how to write blurbs, and you went home and you went, oh my God, look at all that passive language. And I told the whole plot in that blurb. You can pull it and write the new blurb and put it on there. It is so cool. Do that stuff. It's available to you now. Back when I started and you had to go uphill in the snow both ways, you were stuck with the cover that they gave you, and you were stuck with the blurb that they gave you. And a lot of times books tanked because of that. Your book might be tanking right now because you have a bad cover and a bad blurb. And you can fix it. Yay! So cool. The other thing, I've heard this a lot this weekend, and I strongly disagree with it. Stop reading reviews. I know, they tell you get clues out of how to market your books and stuff out of the reviews and who your readers are and everything else. Don't read your reviews. You're a writer. That's your story. So what if they don't like the trope that you're using? So what if you subverted it? J.K. Rowling subverted the school book. British fiction has this going to school kind of thing that happens in tons. Enid Blyton did it, and all these other writers did it. And then J.K. Rowling wrote about it with magic. That was subverting it. So that you can imagine if she got her start in indie and a bunch of the people who loved the Enid Blyton books came on and said, I don't like magic in my school books. She might have taken that as, oh, I'm marketing it the wrong way. Don't do it. The reviews don't belong in your head. If nothing else, if you need to have information out of those reviews, I'm sure you have a good friend who will read those to you, read those and say, you know, people are thinking this is, maybe it's some kind of romance, but you have robots. Maybe we should market it a little differently because they don't like the robots with the romance and you don't have a happily ever after. So maybe you're not really a romance. Maybe you're science fiction with some romantic elements. But your friend can help you figure that out. You don't need to do that yourself. Keep these voices out of your head. Keep the voice in your head pure. Keep control of your own work. You are the god of your own fiction. All right, the other thing in business, and this is really tempting, even for me, I've been in this business a long time. If you come to something like 40 Books, you're going to do something because everybody else is doing it. And it was successful for this person over here. So maybe I need to do this kind of marketing and do it in exactly that kind of way. There is nothing wrong with doing that kind of marketing in exactly that kind of way, unless you internalize it and going, I should, I need to, I have to, because if I don't, my book isn't going to sell and it won't be perfect. So you've got to really do a gut check on that stuff, guys. If you're doing it as an experiment to see if, hey, you know, maybe that method will work for my books, fine and cool. But if you're doing it because you were told at this conference that that is the absolute way that you need to do that and you internalized it, don't do it. Do it because it's good for you. Do it because it might be good for your books. Do it because you need to experiment. Do it because your books aren't selling quite as well as you thought they were going to. And see if that gooses them a little bit. If it doesn't, it's not because you screwed up. It's because that method doesn't work for you. Or maybe that method's time has come and gone. I've been doing a lot of this stuff with indie now for almost 10 years, and I can tell you that there are trends in marketing just like there are trends in fiction. And so, you know, what's hot for a while isn't hot anymore, and after a while it cools off. That's what you got to figure out. And that's how you've got to figure it out. Just remember, you are in control of your own fiction. Yeah, somebody said on the panel I was on earlier, they said, you know, 800-page fantasy novels aren't the way to go anymore. Now you've got to do a book a month. And I'm like, I like 800-page fantasy novels as a reader. I want to read them. So I hope that not everybody takes that advice into their writing and stops writing those 800-page fantasy novels, because there are readers for it out there. You just got to trust it, and you got to learn how to find them. That's your goal in business, is find your readers, the people with the same taste that you have, the people that want the kind of stories you're telling. And yeah, that might take time. What's wrong with that? I know we all want to be rich tomorrow. It doesn't happen to most of us. But we can become rich slowly. You build an audience, you build a readership, you build a fan base, and eventually you suddenly realize that the books that were selling one copy a year are suddenly selling thousands of copies a month. And that happens slowly because you guys are all readers, you know how this works, it's word of mouth. You gotta read this guy over here. I don't normally read fantasy, but he has this great perspective and way of looking at the world, and his characters are so fascinating. I read his mystery novel earlier, same voice. That's what you're going for. You're going for readers who are telling other readers that they want their friends to read this stuff because they want to talk to them about it. And the only way you can do that is to become the god of your own fiction, to feel confident in what you do, and to stop having everybody else tell you that what's wrong with your work. If you need to sit in a peer critique group, listen to what they say that's good about your work and write it down. Don't write the bad stuff down, because that's the stuff you don't want to change. If you do end up with a developmental editor, look at the stuff they don't touch and say, hey, maybe that stuff's working. Or maybe my developmental editor has a fondness for that kind of stuff. If your marketing didn't work, it might not be appropriate for the book and the story you're telling. It might not be that you did it wrong. It just might not be appropriate. Figure that out. So I guess what I'm telling you guys is to be confident in your writing. I know that's hard because we're all this mixture of insecurity and confidence, and insecurity and ego, really, because we all have the ego to think that once we put our book out there, millions of people are going to want to read it. But we're all insecure enough to think that the manuscript is a piece of crap. So you got to find the happy medium in there somewhere. Grab that ego, let that ego say, hey, no, you know, it's my book. I don't need your opinion on it. And at the same time, you need to have that insecurity say, you know, the stuff I've been doing on the marketing isn't quite working, so maybe I should see if this other stuff works. You just assign them a little differently. The ego belongs in the writing. The ego needs to be really strong. The ego needs to be there going, my book, it's good, screw you. The insecurity needs to be over in the marketing going, you know, has that changed? I need to figure that out. Well, I heard about this Amazon thing. I think I might try it. That's how I got into indie publishing. I heard about this Amazon thing. And, ebooks. Let's see if it works. Well, lo and behold, it worked. That was 10 years ago. Just try. So that's my perfection speech. I want you guys to hang on to your dreams. Hanging on to your dreams is believing in yourself. And now that I've done that, and I've got about 15 minutes, let's have some questions. And they can be about anything, because I talked about a bunch of stuff over the last 2 days. So it doesn't necessarily have to just be about this topic. So if I said something in the last couple of panels that caught your interest, ask me a question, and I'll see if I can answer it.
Hi.
Hi.
I found in my personal life that competence breeds confidence. So I'm curious if you're still in the place where you're developing your craft, or, maybe you've read a lot, but this is your first, going out and actually applying everything you've learned. If you don't go to peer groups, don't read reviews, and don't get a developmental editor, how do you troubleshoot?
You're asking two different questions, actually. She asked, the first question that you asked is competence brings confidence. And the second one is, how do you find out if you're competent without other people telling you that? Okay?
Well, I don't think other people need to tell me I'm competent, but when I look at people's reactions, I can pick out things about okay, I'm getting these impressions, why am I getting those impressions? And I look at the principles underneath that. So it's not like...
But you may not be understanding what they're saying. If it's just a review, it's just a paragraph. I mean, they may have been having a bad day.
Right.
They may have been having a great day. You don't know. You don't know if... the science fiction editor named Gardner Dozois had a phrase that I just love. And he said, every reader has a certain kind of cookie that they like. And what that means is, for me, if I'm reading romance, it's princess stories. Okay, I'm a girl, sue me. So if I see something that's a princess story, I'm going to grab it. I'm just going to read it. I don't care if it's the stupidest thing on the planet. I'm going to read it. I'm going to love it. That's a reader cookie. And so you don't know if the person who wrote that review, you hit one of their reader cookies, or if you did everything right. You have no idea.
For sure.
And you know what? It's not your job. It's not your job to know whether you did everything right or not. Your job is to write the next story, and the next story, and the next story. So what you need to be able to do is gain the confidence from the things you can control. How much you write, how well you write, what you're going to keep doing. Keep learning your craft. I do. I keep learning my craft all the time. I never have stopped. There's always a level above where I'm at. And one way to learn your craft, guys, is to read a lot. There's always a writer out there who's going to write way better than you feel like you can write. And you try to emulate them and go there. I understand it would be so nice if somebody was able to tell me what I did right and what I did wrong. But I have a book out there that I wrote when my father died. And I hate that book. I hate it with a bloody passion. I won't reread it. I won't look at it. I won't deal with it. And there are people in the world who love that book, and they come and tell me that they love that book. And do I say, oh, that's that piece of crap I wrote when my dad died? No. I let them tell me that this is their favorite thing. And have they changed my opinion about that book? No, I still think it's that piece of crap I wrote when my dad died. But I'm really grateful that they're out there, because they are the people who remind me that the book exists for a reason, and it's not necessarily my reason. It's their reason, because they're interacting with your work too. And they're bringing something to your work as well. And so for whatever reason, they really love that book. For whatever reason, I really hate that book. The story is probably somewhere in the middle. So did I get to your question?
In a way, but I guess I have plenty of confidence myself. This is more for my clients that I'm asking this question. But it's the fact that we come to this in a business perspective where it's look at the data, look at what's working, look at what's not working, and if your career is not working, how can you troubleshoot that? And I look at all of the reviews, all of the as data points of okay, that's not my reader, but they picked up my book. So I'm reaching that kind of reader, but they're getting an impression that's not what I'm intending. So it's coming from a place of still, I know what my story is, and I know what I want it to be, and that's what it's going to be. But I need to,
if you're a strong enough writer that you can do that, then go ahead. Most writers are not. Data, this is the thing that scares me the most about indie, is that it's going to change how people write. That, you know, source books for a while started this thing where they were telling their authors that, you know, if their readers didn't get past page 10 or whatever it was in the book, if the bulk of the readers didn't get past that, then they needed to change up their writing somehow. And I'm like, if the book was good enough for you people to buy it in the first place, you editors. So no, that's not, we don't want to do that. Fashions change. The data is great. But there could be other problems as why the book's not selling. It may not be, there may be the first book in a series and there are no other books in the series. It may not be in the trendy genre. It may be a whole bunch of things. Data is good and data is bad. And if you look at the data for the marketing stuff and the business stuff, that's going to help you. But if you try to apply it to your fiction, you're going to be doing just what a peer critique group does when you're critiquing in the middle. Because you don't know what's the best thing about your fiction, and you might be throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And that's what I worry about.
Okay, thank you.
An editor here wondering, how do I coach clients who their command of story structure is growing? How do I do that without trampling their voice? I want to maintain their voice but help them tell stories that are satisfying. Does it help to know that I help writers do romance?
Thank you for asking the question, and thank you for asking from an editor's perspective. I have edited for 30-some years. And there are things as editors that we can do to reach in and tweak as long as you respect the author's voice. Okay? But mostly, when you're talking about story structure and stuff, that's a whole different ballgame. My very first novel, I did something in there because I was a brand new writer and nobody had told me you couldn't do it. I can't tell you because it's a twist in the middle, but it just completely blows the socks off of everybody because you're not supposed to do that. And I did it, and I did it successfully. The thing is, could I do it now, 30 years on? No, I couldn't. I have too much education. I really couldn't do it. So there are things that new writers do that screw up story structure that make them really good writers. And you've got to start learning how, as an editor, and this is the tough thing, to separate out your taste from your editing. There are things, me as an editor, I can't edit because I don't like that subgenre, or I don't like that particular writer, or I don't like that particular way of telling a story. And once you have that cleared out, and that's going to take some time, then you'll be able to help people more with story structure.
Thank you.
So no peer critique groups, no editors. So I'm going to ask a positive question.
Okay.
How do you recommend developing craft so that we can better ensure that what's in our head is what's getting into our reader's head?
You practice. Writing is the only profession in which we do not tell people to practice. We tell them, you know, you got to write the same story over and over and over again and rewrite it 50 times. That's not practicing. I got a piano when I turned 40, and I discovered that everybody who can play the piano that I thought could play the piano actually could play their performance piece. But if you put a piece of music in front of them, they couldn't play it. They had forgotten all of that. But they could play their performance piece, the one they had memorized and gone over. That's not playing the piano. Rewriting a story because somebody tells you to do it, that's not learning how to write. That's learning how to rewrite. Learning way you can learn how to write is to keep writing. Learning your craft, you have to read from other people. You have to figure out how they did it. You look at other storytelling methods. I'm so lucky I live in Las Vegas because there are stand-up comedians. Talk about a scary way of telling a story. Standing up and being a comedian to make people laugh, some of whom are going to throw things at you because they're drunk. No, thank you. I'd rather write in my room, okay? But I can learn as a writer how to tell stories from them. So you start saying, okay, I went and saw this stand-up comedian and they did this thing. Can I replicate it in fiction? And then you start growing and you start reaching and you start trying other things. That's how you do it. You try and you fail and you try and you succeed. And sometimes you don't know if you succeed until you put it out there. So you publish it. That's why you write and release. And eventually, if you've got your marketing correct and if you've got your covers correct, your readers are going to tell you. And they're not going to tell you in the reviews. They're going to tell you with their money. And they're going to tell you by signing up for your newsletter, and they're going to tell you by telling your friends, their friends, to read your book. And that's how you know. And I know it's not a satisfying answer. I really wish I could say, you know, that peer thing is going to work, but it won't.
Thank you.
I really resonated with what you were talking about with your hummingbird brain yesterday and having shiny object syndrome. And I was just wondering if you had tips on, for someone who has shiny object syndrome, but also likes to be productive and disciplined, it can be frustrating to kind of know how to juggle those two sides. So I was wondering if you could speak to that.
I have learned to accommodate my hummingbird brain because that's where my creativity comes from. It comes from that. But that's where I also learned to use my critical voice. My critical voice, and I should probably talk to you guys for a minute about critical voice after I finish this, but my critical voice is that voice that tells me what to do. That voice has got to tell me, you got to finish that. Because see, when I get to about 3/4 to the end of a story, I know it's going to end. So I don't care. Why finish it? In fact, you met my husband Dean the other day, you guys. When I handed him a story one time, and I skipped over the climax part, and I just kind of wrote, and then they lived happily ever after. And he said, well, what happened here? And I said, I gave you all the pieces. Figure it out. He married me anyway. But yeah, so I have to use the creative voice, or the critical voice, to force the creative voice to finish sometimes. And sometimes that's a mind game, like I was talking about yesterday. You have to figure out what it is that'll get you to finish. Is it a cookie later? Is it, a nice glass of wine? Is it, you get to buy this particular book? Is it just the joy of finishing? For me, it never is, because that's the boring part. Who cares? Or you get to move on to a new project. You got to learn how to tame your own critical, or create, your own hummingbird brain.
That's helpful. Thanks.
So this is kind of a two-part question. So you said you don't like critique group feedback because it's usually like one chapter at a time or something like that. But how do you deal with issues where, it doesn't matter how good the payoff at the end is if the middle is too slow to get through? And related to that, what about beta readers? Do you use them, and how would you use them?
Good question. Beta readers. But I use beta readers. I have beta readers. I have only one beta reader who is a writer. That's my husband. And I sometimes have to tell him to shut up because he's going to write his own story over mine, which is what writers usually do. But my other beta readers are readers. They're actual readers. They read my stuff. And I never ask them, well, did the middle seem slow to you? Because then they're going to stop and they're going to, yeah, or no. But I just let them tell me about the book. That's it. And one of the things that's really important to have them tell me about the book is how long it took to read it. I wrote a book that was about the way that, in my Chris Scott mode, it's a very dark mystery novel, and it focuses on the way that Americans treat their children. And one of my beta readers his wife was pregnant with their first child, and he kept putting the book down. And I went, oh, this is a pretty disturbing book, if he kept putting it down. And then I realized, no, he didn't want to think about all the bad things that happened to kids while his wife was pregnant, because my 4 other beta readers couldn't put the book down literally. So you gotta, look at their life experience. But mostly, if all 5 of them had put it down in the middle and it had taken them 6 weeks to get through it, guess what? There's a problem in the middle. They don't need to find the problem, and they don't need to tell you how to fix it. They already found the problem, but they didn't know it. If they all read it overnight, you've got a barn burner of a book.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're all kind of white knuckle holding on to our peer critique groups.
Yes, I'm sure you are.
Possibly because we're all just lonely and it's scary to let go of them. So I've been in, out, and around writing groups for about 10 years now, and I don't know if I can differentiate between what is my authentic voice and then what I've been told my authentic voice has to be. Do you have a recommended brand of bleach or a reset button I can get on Amazon or anything for that?
I have an intervention. I have a 2-part intervention. I love hanging out with writers, too. So go have drinks with them. Go have coffee with them. Talk business, because you'll learn a lot. That's what this is for, marketing and business. Substitute that for your peer critique group. But the solution to getting rid of your authentic voice to your actual voice, mail your first drafts. Publish your first drafts. That book you rewrote 15 times, throw out the 15th draft, go back to the first draft. Publish that one. I know that makes, I just watched one person in the audience go, like that. Yes, do it that way, because that's your authentic voice. That's the one that's you haven't interfered with at all. Basically, guys, we're almost to the end here. Your creative voice is a 2-year-old. And you guys have all seen 2-year-olds, right? They run around like crazy. I watched one the other day pull off all his clothes while his mother was chasing him across a casino. The mother is the critical voice. And the critical voice is out there to help you survive in the world. That 2-year-old should not go outside like that. We all know that. But it's so fun. Your critical voice thinks everything is a catastrophe because it's your parents' voice. And when you were 2, everything was a catastrophe. So take that critical voice and move it into marketing and business, and that will be where it works best, not in your craft. So it looks like we're done. Thank you all for being so attentive. I hope I didn't scare you too much.